Everyone says cats are aloof, but that idea falls apart the moment you watch how carefully they position themselves around the people they trust. Their distance isn't detachment. It's a kind of silent assessment that most of us miss entirely. They read the room long before we do, choosing where to sit and when to intervene with surprising accuracy. Their intuition often outpaces our logic in ways we rarely admit. In a moment, you'll uncover why this misunderstood nature might be your greatest unseen shield. And if you'd like to keep exploring truths hidden in plain sight, you're welcome to stay with me here. Chapter 1. Electromagnetic and Earth Field Detection. Have you ever noticed how your cat suddenly lifts its head, as if tuning into something you can't hear or feel? That moment often carries a kind of quiet tension, like they're sensing a shift in the room long before it reaches you. Their body language might look subtle, but there's a deep awareness behind it, shaped by instincts that pick up on the Earth's faintest changes. Your cat moves through these signals the way you move through light and sound, reading patterns that fall completely outside your perception. It creates a strange kind of comfort knowing they're tracking the environment on a level that doesn't depend on sight or sound at all. And once you recognize how attuned they are, you start to see their stillness not as idleness, but as a form of watching. Chapter 2. Early warning response to environmental threats. Most people underestimate how often a cat reacts to danger long before any human realizes something is wrong. You might think your cat is simply restless or pacing for no reason, but there's usually a quiet purpose behind those sudden shifts in behavior. Their ears, their posture, even the way they reposition themselves can all carry hints of something changing in the world around you. It's almost unsettling how quickly they sense pressure drops, electrical irregularities, or the first vibrations of a distant tremor. When they suddenly grow alert or try to get your attention, it's their way of bridging the gap between what they feel and what you can't yet recognize. And once you start noticing the pattern, you realize they've been trying to guide you towards safety far more often than you ever understood. Chapter 3. Thermal and environmental hazard recognition. Your cat can sense dangerous heat long before you notice anything is wrong. It's almost eerie how they'll pause in front of an appliance or stare at a wall, as if something beneath the surface is calling for their attention. You may not think much of it in the moment, but they're reading tiny shifts in temperature and energy that hint at problems you haven't discovered yet. Their instincts lean toward protection, guiding them to check the warm spots, the cold drafts, and the subtle chemical trails that drift through a home when something isn't right. And when their behavior suddenly becomes urgent, when they pace, vocalize, or refuse to leave your side, it's rarely random. It's their way of telling you that the environment has changed in a way you shouldn't ignore. Over time, you begin to realize their alertness isn't anxiety at all, but a quiet devotion to keeping the space around you safe. Chapter 4. Detection of chemical and biological changes. It's easy to overlook the moment your cat suddenly sniffs the air and freezes. But that tiny pause often means they've noticed something your body hasn't processed yet. Their senses move far beyond simple smells, reaching into the faint chemical shifts that happen when gas leaks, emotional stress, or even illness begins to rise in a home. You might see them draw closer to you on days when you feel off. Not because they want attention, but because they've picked up on subtle changes in your breath, your skin, or the way your body carries tension. Sometimes their purring or gentle nudging isn't comfort for its own sake, but a response to signals you never meant to send. When their behavior changes around someone who's sick or anxious, it's their way of matching the energy they feel and offering a kind of quiet intervention. And once you recognize this pattern, you start to understand that their reactions are often far more deliberate and compassionate than they first appear. Chapter 5. Nocturnal sentinel and home surveillance. You've probably seen your cat slip silently through the hallway at night, pausing in the dark, as if listening to something you'll never hear. There's a different kind of awareness in them after the lights go out, a watchfulness that doesn't fade just because you're asleep. While you rest, they follow temperature shifts, air movements, and subtle environmental cues that most people pass off as nothing more than drafts or creaks. Your cat seems to map the home in a way that blends instinct with something almost ceremonial, choosing certain spots near doors or windows, as if those points matter more than others. Their night vision and sensitivity to tiny fluctuations give them a level of vigilance you benefit from without ever asking. And when you finally see how intentional their nighttime routines are, you start to realize they've been keeping watch over the home long after you stopped paying attention. Chapter 6. Emotional and Physiological Monitoring. There's a quiet kind of comfort in knowing your cat can sense your stress before you even say a word. They pick up on the subtle shifts in your breathing, the tension in your shoulders, and the chemical traces that rise in your body when life feels heavy. What looks like a simple curl against your side or a gentle purr often carries a deeper purpose, almost as if they're trying to steady the energy you're giving off. Your cat reads these moments like emotional footprints, guiding them toward you when your mind starts to scatter or your heart begins to race. Their touch, their warmth, even the way they position themselves across your chest or lap becomes a soft counterweight to everything you've been holding in. And once you see how precisely they respond to your emotional changes, it becomes hard not to feel grateful for a presence that supports you without asking for anything in return. Chapter 7. Predictive behavioral alerts for mental health events. People often assume a cat is just being clingy, but that idea doesn't hold up once you notice how their closeness intensifies right before your emotions do. They seem to track the small shifts that build inside you, the kind you dismiss as nothing until they decide to step in with a steady presence. Sometimes they follow you from room to room. Sometimes they sit and stare with a seriousness that feels almost out of place. And sometimes they simply press their body against you, as if anchoring you in the moment. Your cat notices what your mind tries to outrun, sensing the rise of panic or overwhelm in a way that feels almost uncanny. That subtle intervention, whether it's a soft nudge or a sudden insistence on staying near, becomes a quiet barrier between you and the spiral you didn't see coming. And when you start recognizing the timing of these moments, you can't help but realize they've been offering early warnings long before you understood what they meant. Chapter 8. Energy Regulation and Environmental Cleansing. There's a gentle kind of relief that comes from knowing your cat can smooth out the emotional atmosphere of a room without you doing anything at all. You've probably seen them wander into a tense space and start grooming themselves or rubbing against furniture, as if they're resetting something that went out of balance. Their reactions may look casual, but they're responding to the emotional currents you leave behind when you're stressed, frustrated, or overwhelmed. Your cat reads those patterns almost like a second language, sensing when the energy around you becomes tangled or heavy, and stepping in with quiet, instinctive rituals that soften the edges again. And when they choose to sit in certain corners or lie across your path, it's often their way of redirecting the mood in the home so it doesn't settle into you too deeply. Once you notice how these small behaviors shift the feeling of a room, you begin to understand that their presence isn't just comforting, it's transformative in ways you may not have seen before. Chapter 9. Creation and maintenance of sanctuary spaces. There's something quietly reassuring about knowing your cat can turn an ordinary room into a place that makes you breathe a little easier. It doesn't happen all at once, but you start to feel how certain spaces in your home carry a softness after your cat spends time there. They seem to choose these spots with a kind of instinctive wisdom, settling in places where the atmosphere feels calmer, lighter, almost protected. Your cat absorbs the subtle strain that builds up in a home and replaces it with a steadier emotional rhythm, almost like they're tuning the environment back to something more natural. Their favorite resting places often become the rooms where you unconsciously linger, sensing a peace you can't quite explain, but trust without questioning. And once you realize these spaces exist because of them, it changes how you see the quiet work they've been doing all along. Chapter 10. Impact of modern technology on feline sensory abilities. It's tempting to believe that all the screens and signals in your home go unnoticed by your cat. But that idea doesn't match what their behavior quietly reveals. You may have seen them avoid certain corners, stare at devices with unease, or leave the room the moment a new gadget powers on. These reactions aren't just quirks. Their responses to layers of artificial noise that interfere with the delicate senses they rely on to understand the world. Your cat tries to navigate shifting waves of electromagnetic activity the same way you try to think in a crowded, chaotic room. And when the interference fades, when the home becomes quieter in a way technology can't measure, you'll notice them settle, breathe, and return to the calm attentiveness that once guided every part of their awareness. That shift makes it clear just how much they lose when the modern world drowns out the instincts that keep them connected to you. Chapter 11. Supporting and enhancing natural protective instincts. You might notice your cat wandering into a quiet corner, circling once, and settling with a purpose that feels almost ceremonial. That small moment reveals how much they depend on having spaces where their senses can reset and return to their natural clarity. When you honor those places, instead of rearranging or dismissing them, you give your cat room to recover from the noise and movement of your daily life. Your acknowledgement of their warnings and subtle behaviors deepens their confidence, encouraging them to keep sharing the signals they pick up long before you do. Even simple rituals, soft moments without devices, gentle touch, or sitting beside them in their chosen territory help restore the bond that makes their protective nature so steady. And as you begin noticing how their instincts sharpen when they feel understood, you realize that supporting them isn't complicated at all. It's really just about creating a home where their quiet wisdom has space to breathe. By now, you can probably feel how much of your cat's world has been quietly connected to your own. And it's okay if that realization makes you feel a little more understood than you expected, because your cat has been responding to your presence all along. The beauty of it is how simple the takeaway really is. They've been caring for you in their own language, and now you're finally learning to hear it. With that awareness, your moments together gain a kind of softness that's easy to lean into. And that softness naturally leads to another question about the way they position themselves around you, especially when they choose closeness without full contact. That choice carries a meaning that's easy to miss, but hard to forget once you know it. If you'd like to uncover that layer of their affection, the next part of the journey is right here waiting.